Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to my presentation. I will be talking to you guys about all of the RCSEF forms. Um, I will be showing you what the forms look like. I will be going over with you guys how to complete them and whatever necessary information or necessary individuals that will be necessary for you to complete these forms. I believe now we are on good time, so let us get started. Okay, so to give a little bit of overview before I go into every single one of the forms, I would like to just go over the different types of forms that we will be covering now. So not all forms will have to be completed. It is up to you to decide and to read through all of the rules and regulations to determine what forms should be completed. However, I will go over what forms will be required for everyone to complete, regardless of what your project topic or title is. So to begin with, we're going to cover Form 1 first, which is our checklist for adult sponsors. I will go more in depth into each of these forms as I go one at a time, but I just would like to give everyone a quick overview so that way we're all on the same page of where we're going and that nobody gets lost. If anyone has any questions, please do not be afraid to ask us. I will be, more than happy to answer your questions. If I cannot answer your questions, then Ms. Shamoja will be more than happy as well to answer. So as I said, Form 1, it will be your checklist for adult sponsor. We will go into that pretty shortly. Form 1A will be the student checklist along with the research plan. I will go more in depth on the research plan as it is quite important for all projects, as all projects do require one prior to experimentation. Next, we will go over Form 1B, which is a little bit more simple. It's more of an acknowledgement form. Form 1C, we'll go over as well. Form 1C will be in relation to any student who will be conducting their project or their research outside of their home, outside of their school, or outside of a laboratory setting, in the laboratory setting. So that form we'll go over more in depth as to what needs to be filled out, who needs to be present, and everything like that. Form number 2 will be for a qualified scientist. I will go in depth as to who a qualified scientist is or what the individual needs to have in order to be called a qualified scientist. Form 3 is a risk assessment form. It's pretty much exactly as what it sounds. It's going to be talking a lot about different risks that you can have within your project, whether they could cause injury or disease, whatever it may be, and as to how you're going to mitigate that and to avoid getting yourself hurt or anyone else hurt. Form 4 will be for human participants. So this will be for projects where it's going to involve other individuals other than yourself or whoever you are working with. Forms 5A and B will be in relation to vertebrate animals. I will go in depth as to what each form is. One form will be a little bit in relation to working from home, from school, or not in a laboratory setting. And then 5B will be for individuals who are working in a laboratory setting. Form 6A will deal with biological hazards. Again, we will go more in depth into each one, as 6B will be in relation to human and vertebrate animal tissues and as to how you are to use them. And then Form 7 will be for continuation projects. So continuation projects I will go in depth on as well. And then the last form we'll be talking about is the abstract template, which all projects will need to have. Okay, with that being said, I will begin with Form 1. So Form 1 is for a checklist for an adult sponsor. So an adult sponsor can pretty much be anyone. However, primarily your adult sponsor is the individual who pretty much oversees and who helps the most the student. So an adult sponsor can be a parent, it can be a teacher. It doesn't per se need to be someone who is well knowledgeable of the field that the student is working in. However, it does need to be someone who is in close contact with the student for majority of their time doing their research, as this individual is going to make sure that the student follows all rules and regulations, does not get hurt. Yeah, so that will be your adult sponsor. So this form is not for students. I will repeat that one more time. This form is not for students to fill out. So if you're a student watching this, make sure that you are not the one filling out this form. You make sure that this will be whoever that adult figure is that is most closely associated with you. As I said, it could be your teacher, could be your parent, but whoever is in most close contact with you for the entire duration of your project. The next form is your student checklist. So unlike Form 1, this one is actually for students. So this form is intended for students to fill out. This form will basically include or will be meant for students to put their most pertinent information. This could be this will be obviously your name, your project title, your school address, some questions to fill out as to like whether your project needs additional approval. All projects do need some sort of approval from your local SRC or your local science fair. However, there are certain projects that will need further approval and certification, and I'll go more into that as we progress. But as I said, each of those certifications or approvals will most likely be associated with some of the other forms I will go over. Some other information will be like how long you conduct your project for. For example, you need a start and end date, where it was conducted, where all your data came from, and pretty much other stuff like that. That's pretty basic. As for the research plan, so every single project will need a research plan. And I will repeat that one more time. Every project needs one. This should be completed at the beginning of your experimentation. So before you even start experimenting, you must complete a research plan. This research plan must be read and approved by your local SRC. The reason for is so that your SRC will look through everything that you plan to do, and anything that seems like you'll be breaking any rules or something that you want to do that maybe you shouldn't do, SRC will be sure to note that down and to let you as the student know. Any changes you make to your project have to be reflected as well in your research plan. You cannot just get it approved and then say make a bunch of changes and then continue on with your project. You have to have everything that you are going to do to be reviewed and approved by your SRC. Yeah. Okay. As to our next form, so Form 1B. So this form is a little bit more basic in the sense of this form is pretty much all you're doing is you're signing and acknowledging that you as the student, first of all, have read the rules and regulations. You are adhering to all the rules and regulations. You are abiding by all ethics standards. You are certifying that you have gotten your proposed research plan written and approved. So that's you as a student, and then the parent or guardian as well has to sign. So for all you students out there, yes, you are signing a portion of this, but as well, your parents have to sign a portion for this, okay? So pretty much the same thing is acknowledging that you as the parent have read and understand any risks and dangers involved with the project or the research plan, and that basically you're consenting to your child participating. The other half of the form, which is labeled 2, will be completed first by the affiliate SRC. So this will be pretty much like your school science fair or whatever local science fair that you are part of. That entity will be signing the first part of 2. And then for the third section, final RCSEF affiliate fair form, that will be signed by RCSEF. So this will not be signed by your school. This will be signed by RCSEF, okay? So you and your parents are responsible for signing the top part for 1. Your local SRC is responsible for signing part 2, and then RCSEF will sign part 3 after a final review of everything. Form 1C. Okay, so as I mentioned before, Forms 1, I will go back to it just to make sure that everyone understands. Form 1, so this is the adult sponsor form. Form 1A, which is the student checklist, and Form 1B are all required forms. So it is not your choice whether or not you would like to fill these out. These 3 forms are mandatory, okay? So I want to reiterate that just to make sure there's no confusion or anything. Forms 1, 1A, and 1B are all required. Everyone must fill these out. And then for 1B also, another thing to add, if you're working in a team, every team member must fill them out. So this isn't a form where just one of you, like a team leader per se, fills it out and then everyone's covered. No, everyone has to fill the form out. Okay, now that I got that covered, now we'll go to 1C. So 1C, this is not a form that everyone has to fill out, but I will still go over what is required. Okay, so this form is basically for any project that involves a student working in a setting that is not at home, or that is not at home, not at their school, or possibly in a laboratory setting. So if you're working at home, if you're working at your school, or if you are working in any environment that is not a formal laboratory setting, you do not need to worry about this form. However, if you are working in a laboratory setting, in a professional setting, or any type of institutional setting, you must fill this form out. So to pretty much cover, this form will be completed by the supervising adults. So students, you do not need to worry about this form. Let me get that clear one more time. Students do not have to fill out this form. This is for an adult. This is for the supervising adult to fill out. There will be there's 5 questions total that the adult must answer. All questions must be answered completely here. A couple questions there are listed as like having certain sense requirements. For example, 1B must be completed. So you have 1A that needs to be completed, and then if so like for number 1, right? So if you answer yes, then numbers 2 through 5 all have to be complete. And then at the end, the supervising adult will sign. Whatever institution you're working at must be stated, the address and all the information of it. I will reiterate one more time in case anyone forgot or anyone didn't hear. This is only for adults to fill out. This is not for students to fill out. Form 2. So this form, again, not for students. So if you're a student watching this, this is not a form you need to worry about personally. However, this form must be filled out by a qualified scientist if a qualified scientist is required. So just to go over real quick, so qualified scientist is any individual who has extensive knowledge and experience in the student's area of research. So generally, a qualified scientist obviously will be someone who has an educational background in that field of research. It'll be an individual who has experience in that field of research, and it'll be an individual who'll be working with the student along with their research. So once again, I will say one more time, this form is not for students. This form is for qualified scientists when a qualified scientist is required. Some instances where qualified scientists may be required are projects dealing with human participants, vertebrate animals, hazardous biological agents, or other hazardous substances and devices. As I said, the qualified scientist is an adult figure who has extensive knowledge and experience within the particular field of research. This form must be filled out and signed prior to the student performing their experiment. So I want to get that out. This form is not to be completed afterwards. This form is to be completed before experimentation begins. And then this form's pretty much simple questions. A lot of them are yes or no for the qualified scientist to answer. The qualified scientist must put their personal information in, their name, their background, any degrees that they have, so your educational background, and then wherever they work. Form 3, okay, so this form is not per se required. However, it is highly encouraged for everyone to complete this form. So this form is called risk assessment. So all this form does is basically it's almost like a checklist in a sort of way for the student to note down and write down any risks and hazards that will be present during their experiment. This particular form, like I said, it's not required. However, it is highly encouraged. And it's just more to give not just yourself, but any reviewing SRC party. It is just in order to give them perspective of anything dangerous that you are dealing with as a student and what steps and precautions you're taking to avoid getting hurt. That's just one important part. Not just you need to note down whatever hazards or anything that you'll be exposed to, but you need to also note down what steps you're going to take to ensure you or any other involved parties do not get hurt. So there are 5 questions to fill out, as I've elaborated already. You're pretty much just going to state what risks you're exposed to, any chemicals, any biological agents, hazards, anything you're going to list down. You want to be as specific as possible. Do not be vague, because there are certain items that could get a project either disqualified or held. So you want to make sure you be as specific as possible as to anything dangerous that you're dealing with. And as I said, you will then disclose what precautions you're taking, what disposal procedures you are taking, and then for any safety information you learn, you want to make sure you note down where you got that information from. This form will be completed and signed by the designated supervisor, qualified scientist when applicable. So this means that this form will be filled out not just by so it will be filled out by the student and the designated supervisor working together. Right? So you as a student, yes, you can fill it out, but you want to make sure you have your supervisor, or if you have a qualified scientist, you want to make sure you have them with you. But basically, you're just going to fill it out together. So that way, there's only one form filled out, but you both working on it together ensures that anything and everything that was covered is listed and explained in depth. Form 4. Okay, so this form in particular is for human participants. So if your project does not involve any other individuals, so if your project is basically just you and then whatever research idea you're working on, you don't need to worry about this form. Okay, so this form is pretty much for students who say are conducting surveys, who are testing different products or whatever may be on separate individuals. Basically, like I said, any project that's dealing with more people other than you as the researcher and your qualified scientist or your supervisor. So if your project is dealing with additional people, then you will need this form. If you are not dealing with additional people, there's no need for it. You don't need to worry about it. Okay? And to further add, this form is particularly for projects that involve human participants that are not at a regulated research institution. So say if you're doing your project either, like I said earlier, from home, from your school, or in some sort of environment that is not a laboratory setting, then you need to fill out this form. If you're working with human participants, but say you're at a research institution, you're at some sort of regulated environment, then most likely that environment will have their own set of forms that you need to fill out, so you will not have to worry about this particular form. This form, much like the last form, will be completed by the student researcher in conjunction with the adult sponsor. So there's only one form that needs to be filled out. However, you as a student need to work with your adult sponsor, your qualified scientist, whatever other adult figure you're working with, you must fill it out with them together. And to elaborate a little more, this form in particular, you as the student and your adult sponsor, your qualified scientist, only need to fill out 1 through 4. This bottom part right here is not for you to fill out. This is for a separate party, the IRB, to fill out. Okay, so I will elaborate one more time. This top area is the only area you as the student, along with your adult, are to fill out. Okay, the bottom part you do not need to fill out. A separate party will be filling this out at a future time. So now we are going into the forms that are in relation to vertebrate animals. So much like previous forms where you need to have something specific that you're working on, if you are not working with animals, you're not working with any sort of vertebrate animal, you can safely disregard this form. This form is specifically for projects that are involving or that utilize the use of any sort of vertebrate animal. Specifically, Form 5A deals with projects with vertebrate animals that are conducted either at home, at school, or in any setting that is not a professional laboratory setting. So I'll repeat that one more time. Form 5A is for any sort of project that deals with vertebrate animals that is either at home, at school, or in any sort of environment that is not a professional laboratory setting. The beginning part of this form is to be completed by the student researcher, so questions 1 through 5 will be answered by the student. Make sure you put your name, your project title, like every other form. The bottom part is not to be filled out by the student. I will repeat, this part right here in the box, in the enclosed box, is not to be filled out by the student. Okay, so students, you can disregard this part. You are not the ones that will be filling this out. This will be your local SRC that will be filling this out before you experiment. So this part right here, once you get it filled out, then you can safely conduct your experiment. Okay, so you as a student, will repeat one more time. You must complete questions 1 through 5 of the form. Then this part right here in the enclosed box, you as the student do not have to worry about. You as the student will have this reviewed and signed by your local SRC prior to experimentation. This is to ensure that you as a student are following all rules, all laws, all regulations. That's just to ensure that you will be conducting the experiment in a proper manner, and that you will not be breaking not just any science fair rules, but also any laws either for the state of California or any federal laws. Okay, Form 5B is pretty similar to Form 5A. However, there's one big difference. Form 5B is specifically for any project that deals with vertebrate animals that is conducted in a laboratory setting. So I'm not going to go too much further into Form 5B as it's pretty similar to 5A in what it deals with. However, 5B specifically is for research settings. So if you're in a university, in any sort of professional research institution, this is the form you're going to fill out. Form 6A. So 6A specifically deals with biological hazards. So if your project does not have any biological hazards, don't worry about it. You can go past this form. You don't need to worry about it. However, if it does, you must fill out this form in entirety. This will be filled out by the qualified scientists and designated supervisors. So students, you do not need to fill this out. This is for the adult to fill out. The adult will fill out both sections 1 and 2 and section 3. Section 3 is for the qualified scientists and designated supervisor as mentioned above. So this entire form, students, don't worry about this for an adult figure to fill out themselves. 6B is specifically dealing with human and vertebrate animal tissue. So this is quite a bit different from A in the sense where this really isn't for hazards or anything like that. This specifically if your project involves human or other vertebrate animal tissues. So if your project does not involve any of that, discard it. You don't need to worry about it. If it does, you must fill this form out in its entirety. Yeah. The beginning part, the student may complete. The bottom part, the qualified scientist or designated supervisor must fill out themselves. So again, bottom part, students do not need to worry about that. Form 7, okay, so this for continuation project. Pretty simple, this part. Continuation project is basically any project that you as a student had done in a previous year, any project that say if you are using the same research from a project you had done a previous year, you must fill this form out. If your project is new and innovative, you've never done it before, this is pretty easy to discard. So if your project is brand new and novel, don't worry about it. If this is a continuation from a previous year's work, please fill this out. You must elaborate what has changed, whatever methodology changes, your goals, and all that. Last form is the abstract. All students must complete an abstract. I will repeat, everyone must complete this form. As mentioned earlier, your abstract is quite an essential part of your project, as this pretty much tells your entire story to a judge or any other person reading your project. This abstract should contain every single pertinent piece of information that you have gone over. There's a good little template here as to like what you need to include background, your problem, methods, procedures, claims and results, and any further research or considerations you would like to take with your project. Thank you everyone for attending this. If any of you have any questions, you are more than welcome to either unmute yourselves or drop them in chat. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that are stated. If you have no questions, thank you very much for attending this. It was a pleasure to be able to explain everything to you guys. I'm more than happy, like I said, to answer any questions that are lingering. If you are done, you're more than welcome to leave. I will be presenting this exact presentation again in a little bit. So if you'd like to hear everything again, or you have any of your friends or family that would like to hear the same presentation, please invite them to come on in. Like I said, I'll be presenting this one more time, the exact same presentation. So if you don't need to hear it again, no need to worry about it. You're more than welcome to go. For anyone leaving, have a wonderful day. Have a great weekend. For anyone that has questions, please drop them in chat.